Remakes, remasters, all this stuff has been just the talk of the town for probably the last, I don't know, 15 years, really. The PS3, Xbox 360 generation really started kicking off the remake remaster trend, and it has gone full speed ahead. Today we are talking about Kingdom Hearts 1. Kingdom Hearts, does it actually deserve a remake? And more importantly, should it get one? Does it need one? I'm here today with Alex from Podcast Now, who, if you have not checked out his videos, is an avid Kingdom Hearts fan. He has so much content up over on his channel with Kingdom Hearts, all kinds of other stuff. Gotham Knights, Hogwarts Legacy, Pirates of the Caribbean, Star Wars. It's just a wide plethora over there on his channel. So I hope you will check him out and be subscribed to his channel. Also, I hope today is the day I will earn your subscription on this channel, and I hope you'll check out the links down below. We are trying to grow our social media, our secondary channel, Degenerate Plays, which is a podcast-style Let's Play channel where we actually finished playing through Kingdom Hearts 1. So with that all out of the way, thank you very much. Alex, thanks so much for being here and talking about this with me.
Thank you so much for having me. And, Kingdom Hearts 1, a very, very special game, and I can't wait to talk about it with you.
Yeah, so that's the thing too. It's really interesting. Final Fantasy VII Remake, it sort of kicked off this idea of remaking some games, remastering. Well, not even remastering, just remaking. Kingdom Hearts is a massive fan, obviously, of being remastered. It is remastered more often, than than really anything else. Actually, they had Kingdom Hearts 1.5, 2.5 remixes separate. Then they had them together on the PS4 after being on the PS3 separately. Then they had the story so far, and now there's possible talks, like we said on your channel, of maybe seeing a remaster type thing on PS5. So the thing with Kingdom Hearts 1 is that a lot of people do, not a lot of people, but I've noticed a argument in games journalism, I guess, recently, which you can take for what you want, that it does need an actual remake, that it needs to have improved combat, that it needs to have improved visuals. I personally am going to fall on the side here too of, I don't think this needs a remake at all in any way. In fact, I think Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 proper, along with Birth by Sleep, are still some of the best titles in this franchise, that operate the best. They look really good for the style that they are, up-resed and all this stuff. What do you actually think about this, Alex? Do you think that there should be a remake, or there's even any reason for this to happen?
Yeah, so, I mean, it's tough, and we talked about it even on my channel, right? The idea of moving on. And I think a lot of people in the Kingdom Hearts community, one of the, taking a little poke at the Kingdom Hearts community here, one of the main, I would say, criticisms of Remind and Melody of Memory, and even honestly, in a way, Kingdom Hearts 3 was it didn't move the needle much. Kingdom Hearts 3 moved the needle the most of those three games, but it really, from what people were expecting and where they thought it would push the story going forward, it didn't move it as much as people thought. Remind literally was the same game. Again, there's my little jab, and I'm sure people have a problem with that. Melody of Memory, that was literally a recap game, the entire, and doing it in a different way, the rhythm game, right? However, the last 20 minutes obviously is going into a new direction. So I think we're just at a point where we have the remasters. Like you said, you listed off the 15 collections. We have all that. We've had, I mean, people that are Kingdom Hearts fans, yes, you're going to have the normies, and again, I say that like in a polite way, where it's like you're not, if you're not in that normie group, that's actually a fine thing. People will jump and go back and forth between the main installment games, but maybe they jump off of these other games. But I think the general population, especially ones watching this video or even calling for a Kingdom Hearts 1 remake, we've already played it. We've played all of them. We want what's in the future. We want phase 2. We would have probably imagined we already were in phase 2, but yet again, Nomura just decides that we're now just entering it. So, I think it could use, I mean, like the visuals, like you said, actually it does hold up. Visually it holds up. The camera is awful, but they've tried to work on that in the collections that they've done with it. The combat is actually really good. I would say it's the hardest, maybe with Kingdom Hearts 2, it's the hardest Kingdom Hearts game. But yeah, I think time and where we want the franchise to go is like the biggest things to me that says like, I don't really like if they did it, of course I'd buy it. Of course you'd buy it. Of course we'd play it. But I don't know. I think we're done with it. Let's move. And in fact, Nomura himself has, he's kind of said like, hey, that's phase 1. We're done. Now we're going into phase 2, a whole new Kingdom Hearts. We're leaving behind the old. And so to do that and then to say, oh, but we're remaking the first game, it's kind of, it contradicts each other.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. The thing too is I think that there's a bit of a difference between when these games came out. Final Fantasy VII Remake is designed to retell a story while changing it. Look, and I'm not going to spoil Final Fantasy VII Remake here. If you haven't played it, it is one of my favorite games, honestly, in the last 10 years. I love it to death. I highly recommend it. I recommend you play the original first, because the thing with 7 Remake is that it actually plays off the original. A lot of this stuff is due to timeline changes and differences between this story and the original while staying true to the heart of it. So the problem is with Kingdom Hearts, as they're trying to move forward, if you were going to see a remake in the same style, it wouldn't work with moving forward because you'd have to go back to the past and be changing stuff. If we're just talking about visuals, I think the visuals hold up. The only thing that I could personally see them doing that could maybe improve the game a little bit is going in and remaking cutscenes. That's really about it. Because some of the cutscenes do have the classic Kingdom Hearts 1 mouth moving up and down, not related to any movement of words or anything like that, where it's just a low poly talking, and then other scenes where it's just very in detail talking, stuff like that. But these are minor nitpicks. The combat of Kingdom Hearts 1 holds up probably, again, outside of Kingdom Hearts 2 and Birth by Sleep, it's the best in the franchise. Those three have some of the best gameplay, I think, and I think that's universally agreed on in the entire franchise. They didn't have a lot of problems that later games had. They didn't go flying off the wall trying to come up with new combat systems like the card-based stuff in Chain of Memories that really annoyed a lot of people. These games, these three, especially 1, 2, Birth by Sleep, they work really well. They still work really well. They're all beautiful looking on the PS4. Yes, you can tell that they're old, but they certainly hold up. And the gameplay, I think, is the most important thing. That Final Fantasy VII Remake, as much as I personally, an old man at the age of 26, love turn-based combat, Final Fantasy VII Remake was also partially introduced to bring Final Fantasy VII to a generation of gamers who did not grow up with turn-based combat, really, for the most part, who maybe don't have the patience for it, or maybe they do and they're just not interested in it. There's not really a way to take Kingdom Hearts like that to update the combat style that I think wouldn't completely unbalance the original game, like we saw out of things in Kingdom Hearts 3 with shot locks and all this other stuff that made the game almost a breeze on anything below the highest difficulty setting.
Right. No, I agree. And when and you think about, okay, does it actually need it? And like we said, like it still holds up. You also look at the collections. And again, I poke fun at them, I make fun of them. But in reality, you keep having these collections that have Kingdom Hearts 1 be like a part of it. And then you're going to remake it. You're going to remake it. And then you're going to have to find a way to get that into the collection. And then what if people actually like the original more? Well, now you have a problem. And you have a problem anyway, because do you replace Kingdom Hearts 1 in all future collections by the remake? And then, like you said, the remake, I mean, there's a lot of different reasons why you do a remake, but one of the main reasons, like you said, for Final Fantasy is they updated a lot of it. I mean, and if you go back, I mean, yeah, the story is similar, but in terms of how you play it, how you experience the game, I mean, it is radically different now. And I actually, for what it's worth, I never played the original. So I am one of those people that actually played this one, but not the original. But I love the remake. But I get this is a completely different way of doing it. Like you said, for Kingdom Hearts 1, it would be the same way. Well, you're going to change if you change how something works, you're really messing with Kingdom Hearts. And yeah, Kingdom Hearts 3 has I would say a moderately different combat. I would say it's way too easy. Okay, like super too, but I think it's a game that I think is relatively it's untouched besides the camera work that has been worked on recently. But I think it should stay where it is. Again, it's more of like a time versus like what you want out of the franchise. I want like new original games. I didn't even honestly want memory, the kind of game Melody Memory is. I want future stuff. We already have the collections, and to do a collection because when they do a collection, it's a remaster. They're just remastering a boatload of games all at one time. Why would you do a remaster collection and then say, oh, we're also working on Kingdom Hearts 1 on the side in a remake? And then if you do that, like you said, do you do Chain of Memories? Do you do 2? Do you do Birth by Sleep? Do you do those early on games? Because then you can't work on your 15 games in the future for Phase 2 if you're also still focusing on Phase 1.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, it's kind of time to move on. I think that Nomura as well, and I think sometimes I come off as criticizing him, which I am not trying to do. Nomura's attention is always on multiple projects, and that's fine. But Square relies on him for a lot. I don't think throwing a remake of this on his plate is a good idea. I mean, they even as well talked about expanding Final Fantasy X's canon. And they've talked about doing a prequel, which then they decided not to do because it would have to be a cast of all male characters, and they thought that that might come off a little odd, which is what they said, when talking about Final Fantasy X Zero, the idea of it. But they have actually talked about continuing the story after Final Fantasy X-2 and moving on from there. And the point I'm getting at is, so now you would have Nomura involved in Final Fantasy X-3, basically a spin-off of Final Fantasy X. You'd have him involved in other aspects of Final Fantasy going forward. I assume he is at least somewhat involved in Final Fantasy 16, although I don't know to what degree. You would have him also involved in the future of Kingdom Hearts, which he is just hands-on running, as well as Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. I think that this is an issue of, you don't need to do this. It's not necessary. This game holds up very well. There are some games that will hold up forever that do not need a remake. Even things on like the SNES that you just don't need to touch. They're still great. It doesn't matter, if someone can't enjoy it because the visuals are old, that's kind of their loss. You just don't need to mess with it. And I think Kingdom Hearts is one of those things, along with suffering from the fact that its head, the leader of the franchise, has a lot going on, and he doesn't need more on his plate that will make it harder for him to do the job he wants to do. That's kind of my thoughts on this. Alex, do you have any final closing thoughts on this remake, any other remakes, or anything we really talked about, I guess?
The shortest response would be, if you confuse Nomura too much and you give him too much, think about what that will do to us. He will then kind of collect that into his heart and expel it into the next Kingdom Hearts game. Do we want the next Kingdom Hearts game to be even more confusing? Because it's kind of just a replica, and we won't get into replicas in Kingdom Hearts here because we don't know what the heck's going on, but it's really just a replica of his internal mind, and we don't want to see that.
No, yeah, I'm just long fearing the day when he teams up with Hideo Kojima to bring us a truly terrifying tale that scientists will be working to unpack, almost like the Zodiac Killer's messages for decades to come.
100%.
So, anyways, we love this franchise. We poke fun at certain things, but we absolutely love it. Big fans of this, big fans of Final Fantasy, all this stuff. I appreciate you watching this video very much. Alex, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate you being on here and, talking to me about all this.
Thank you so much for having me, and may your heart be your guiding key.
Hey, thanks, man. I appreciate it. You as well, and I'm thinking of you wherever you are. I pray that our sorrows will end and our hearts will blend, or whatever it was. Thank you, everyone, for watching the video. Be sure to check out the links in the description down below. Alex's channel, I Can't Speak, is one of my favorite channels on YouTube. Seriously, I'm not just saying that because you're my friend. I will put his channel on and listen to a lot of stuff that he talks about. Great. It's like, I always think a podcast now is like a radio show for video games. It's just incredible. So I hope people will check out your channel. The links are in the description down below. Link to my secondary channel down there as well, along with all the social media that we are trying to grow. If you want to reach out to me, contact me. My stuff is always open. I might miss it, but I try to get back to you. Thank you very much. Thanks for the long outro. I'll see you in the next one. Have a fantastic day, and as always, stay shway.